I'm not telling this story to be believed. I'm telling it so you don't make the same mistake we did. Crystal Lake. You've heard the name. Maybe you laughed at the movies, the hockey mask, the whole slasher thing. We did too. That's why we went. 5 of us, cameras ready, looking for content. Looking for proof that legends were just stories people told to keep kids away from rotting docks and condemned cabins. We were wrong about the legends. We were wrong about a lot of things. It was Ryan's idea. He was always chasing the next viral video, the next story that would get shares. Abandoned summer camp, he said. Creepy lake. Perfect October vibes. We'll debunk the whole thing, get some great footage, maybe stay the night. He made it sound like an adventure. Mark backed him up with statistics about how many people visited Crystal Lake every year without incident. Lena and Ethan just wanted to go somewhere together. Before the semester ended, I was the 5th wheel, the one who came along because staying home felt worse than tagging along. We drove in during the late afternoon. The road narrowed as we got closer, trees pressing in from both sides. Old signs warned us about private property, about trespassing. Ryan filmed them all, grinning. "Look at this," he said. "They really commit to the aesthetic." The forest was wrong before we even reached the lake. I noticed it first. No birds, no insects. The wind moved through the branches, but it felt careful, like it was trying not to disturb something. I mentioned it to Lena. She shrugged. "It's late October. Everything's probably dead or hibernating." But it wasn't that. Dead forests are still loud. Leaves crunch. Branches crack. This forest was holding its breath. We found the camp just before sunset. A scatter of cabins around a small clearing, all of them leaning slightly, wood gone gray with rot. The main lodge had collapsed in on itself years ago. Only the dock looked halfway intact, stretching out into the black water like a crooked finger. "Jesus Christ," Ethan said. "This place is actually creepy." Ryan was already setting up shots, panning across the cabins with his camera. "This is perfect. Mark, get some B-roll of the dock. Lena, stand over there by that cabin door. Look scared." "I don't have to look scared," Lena said quietly. We split up to explore. That was the first mistake, but it felt natural at the time. Mark wanted to check the dock. Ryan wanted interior shots. Ethan and Lena went to see if any of the cabins were safe to enter. I stayed near the clearing, watching the light drain out of the sky. That's when I saw it, him, the shape. He was standing between 2 cabins, maybe 60 feet away, just standing there. He wore something dark, coveralls maybe, and his face was pale. No, not pale. Covered. A mask. White and smooth and empty. I didn't move. Neither did he. The weird thing was how still he was. Not like someone trying to hide. Not like someone caught off guard. He stood the way a tree stands. Like he'd been there before I looked. And he'd be there after I turned away. I called out. "Hey, this is private property. We're just..." He didn't respond. Didn't shift. The mask stared at me with holes where eyes should be. My stomach dropped. I turned and walked quickly back toward the others, not running, not yet, but moving fast enough that my boots crunched loud on the gravel. When I glanced back, the space between the cabins was empty. "We need to leave," I told Ryan when I found him. "We just got here." I saw someone out in the woods just standing there. Mark laughed from somewhere near the water, probably a ranger or some local trying to scare the city kids. He wasn't trying to scare us, he was just there, Ryan put a hand on my shoulder. Hey, we drove 2 hours. Let's at least get some footage before dark. If you see him again, we'll pack up. Deal? I didn't argue. I should have. The sun dropped below the tree line. The clearing fell into shadow and the temperature dropped with it. We gathered near the dock, comparing footage, talking about which cabin might be safe enough to explore. The lake stretched out behind us, flat and black. No ripples, no movement. Then the water shifted. Not a splash, not waves, just a change in the surface, like something large had pressed up from underneath and decided not to break through. The dock creaked softly. "Did you see that?" Lena whispered. "See what?" Ethan asked. "The water. It moved." Mark walked to the edge of the dock and looked down. "It's a lake. Water moves." "Not like that." I was watching the tree line. The shape I'd seen earlier hadn't come back, but I felt it. That weight of being observed. The forest was still too quiet. The wind had stopped entirely. "We should go," I said again. "It's getting dark," Ryan admitted. "We'll camp in the clearing tonight, get some more shots in the morning, then head out. Sound good?" It didn't sound good. But I didn't know how to explain what I felt without sounding paranoid, without sounding like I was ruining everyone's trip over nothing. We set up near the main clearing, far from the water. Ryan built a small fire. Mark joked about Jason Voorhees. Lena stayed close to Ethan. I kept watching the spaces between the cabins, waiting for that white mask to reappear. It didn't. But as the fire crackled and the night pressed in around us, I realized something that made my skin crawl. Silence has different species. There's the silence of an empty room, the silence of snowfall, the silence of waiting. This was the silence of something listening. And we weren't alone. We were outnumbered. I didn't sleep that night. None of us really did. Ryan kept the fire going, feeding it branches we'd gathered from the edge of the clearing. Mark tried to joke about horror movie tropes, about final girls and stupid decisions. Lena and Ethan whispered to each other in their tent. I sat with my back against a tree, watching the spaces between the cabins. The white mask didn't come back, but I knew he was out there. What I didn't know was that someone else had arrived. The next morning, we packed up early. Ryan wanted one more sweep of the area, some daylight footage to balance out the night shots. "Just an hour," he promised. "Then we're gone." We were loading gear into the cars when Mark's phone buzzed. He frowned at the screen. "Guys, there was an accident last night. Prisoner transport van crashed about 15 miles from here." "Shit," Ethan said. "Anyone hurt?" Mark scrolled through the article. 2 guards injured. Most of the prisoners were recaptured, but he paused. "One's still missing. They're telling people to stay indoors, lock their doors." Ryan laughed nervously. "Well, good thing we're leaving." But I was thinking about the shape I'd seen, the coveralls. The way he'd stood so perfectly still, like he was waiting for something. "What did he look like?" I asked. "The missing prisoner." Mark shrugged. "They don't say, just that he's dangerous and people should call 911 if they see anything suspicious." We left Crystal Lake an hour later. I should have felt relieved. Instead, I felt like we were leaving something unfinished, like walking away from a test we'd failed without knowing the questions. It was only later, after I'd gone home and tried to sleep and failed, that I started putting the pieces together. The reports came in slowly. A gas station attendant who'd opened up that morning and found the cash register empty, the back door hanging open. No signs of forced entry. Nothing broken except the lock. And even that looked deliberate, careful. A house on the outskirts of town. The owners had been gone for the weekend. When they came back, they found muddy footprints in the kitchen. Dry footprints, not wet. Like someone had tracked in dirt, but then stood still long enough for it to stop dripping. Food was missing from the fridge. A set of clean clothes was gone from the bedroom. The police said it was probably local kids, opportunistic theft after the crash. But I knew better. See, there's something they don't tell you about people who escape from custody. Most of them run. They head for the woods, for the highway, for anywhere that's not where they just were. They panic. They hide. This one didn't run. He moved toward the lights, toward houses, toward people. The footprints were the thing that stuck with me. The reports mentioned them in passing, but I couldn't stop thinking about them. Dry prints in places that should have been wet. Prints that appeared in hallways before anyone reported seeing an intruder, like he'd been standing there for a while, waiting, and no one had noticed until it was too late. I pulled up everything I could find about the crash. The van had been transporting 5 prisoners to a psychiatric facility. 4 were accounted for within hours. The 5th was a transfer from Smith's Grove. No name released, no photo, just a description. Male, approximately 6 feet tall, last seen wearing institutional coveralls. And this, extremely dangerous, do not approach, do not engage. I thought about the man I'd seen at Crystal Lake. The white mask. The absolute stillness. The way he'd watched me like he was learning something. That's when I understood. He hadn't been lost. He'd been hunting. 2 days after we left the lake, there was another report. A woman in Haddonfield, a town about 40 miles from Crystal Lake, came home to find her front door unlocked. Nothing was missing, nothing was broken, but someone had been inside. She knew, because the air felt different, because her bedroom door was open when she'd closed it that morning, because there were marks on the carpet where someone had stood at the foot of her bed. The police found a single footprint in the garden. Dry, clean, precise. They also found something else, though it wasn't in the official reports. I only know because Mark had a friend who worked dispatch, and she told him, and he told me. They found a second set of prints. These were different, heavier, deeper. The kind of impressions that come from weight, from mass, from something that doesn't need to be careful because nothing can stop it anyway. They were wet. They smelled like lake, water, and rot. They came from the direction of Crystal Lake and then disappeared into the drainage system that fed into the town's water supply. 2 sets of tracks, 2 directions, both moving away from the lake. I called Ryan. We need to tell someone about what we saw. Tell them what? That you saw a guy in a mask? The cops already know someone escaped. They don't need us making it worse. There were 2 of them, Ryan. Silence on the line. Then, what are you talking about? At the lake, I saw the man in the white mask. But the water moved. Remember, Lena saw it too. Something came up from under the dock. That was nothing. A fish, a current. It wasn't nothing. Look, Ryan said, and his voice had that edge it got when he was trying to stay patient. We went to a creepy lake. You got spooked, we left. That's it. Don't make it into something it's not. But I couldn't let it go. Because that night, I dreamed about the lake. I dreamed about the dock bending under weight that wasn't there. I dreamed about the white mask turning toward me, learning my face, filing me away for later. And I dreamed about footprints. 2 sets. One dry and deliberate, one wet and heavy, both moving in the same direction. Toward town, we went back. I know how that sounds. I know what you're thinking. But Ryan kept insisting we'd left equipment behind, and Mark wanted more footage. And somehow I let myself be convinced that going back in daylight would be different, safer. Lena and Ethan didn't come this time. Once was enough, Lena said, and I should have listened to the tightness in her voice. It was just the 3 of us. Ryan, Mark, and me. We drove out early, arrived around noon when the sun was high and the shadows were short. The camp looked smaller in full daylight, less ominous. Just rotting wood and peeling paint and 20 years of weather damage. See? Ryan said, climbing out of the car. It's just a place. But the silence was still there. That careful, watching quiet. Mark headed straight for the dock. He'd dropped a lens cap somewhere near the water and wanted to find it before we left for good. Ryan went into the largest cabin. The one we'd avoided the night before because its door hung crooked on broken hinges. I stayed in the clearing, that same prickling awareness crawling up my spine. We'd been there maybe 10 minutes when Mark called out, "Hey, this door's been opened." I walked over to where he stood near a smaller cabin at the edge of the clearing. The door was intact, still on its hinges, but the padlock that had secured it was gone. Not broken. Gone. The hasp was bent slightly, like someone had pried it free with something heavy and flat. Vandals? Mark suggested. Maybe. But I was looking at the ground. There, pressed into the soft earth near the threshold, was a boot print, recent. The edges were still sharp, not yet collapsed by rain or wind, and it was wet, not damp. Wet. Like someone had just stepped out of the lake. "We should go," I said. "We just got here." "Mark." He pushed the door open. It swung inward with a long creak, revealing a dim interior that smelled like mildew and old wood. He stepped inside. I didn't follow. Something about that threshold felt wrong, like crossing it would break a rule I didn't know existed. "There's nothing in here," Mark called from inside, "just old bunks and some..." He stopped talking. "Mark?" "Nothing." "Mark, this isn't funny." I stepped up to the doorway but didn't cross it. The cabin interior was darker than it should have been. The windows blocked by years of grime and warped shutters. I could see the vague shapes of furniture, the outline of what might have been Mark standing near the back wall. "Mark?" The shape didn't move. Then Ryan shouted from the other cabin. Not words, just a sharp, startled sound. I ran. Ryan was backing out of the main cabin when I reached him, his camera forgotten in his hand. His face had gone pale. "What happened?" "Someone's in there. I saw..." He swallowed hard. "I saw someone standing in the hallway, just standing. He didn't say anything. He just watched me." "What did he look like?" "I don't know. It was dark, but I saw his face, white, smooth, like a mask." Ryan nodded. Behind us, I heard the door of the smaller cabin swing shut. Not slam, just close, slow, and deliberate, like someone had pulled it from the inside. "Where's Mark?" Ryan asked. "He went into the other cabin. He stopped talking." We both stared at the closed door. Neither of us moved toward it. "Mark," Ryan called. "Come on, man, we're leaving." No answer. The lake was too quiet. The wind had died. Even the trees seemed to be holding still, waiting. Ryan walked toward the smaller cabin. I grabbed his arm. "Don't. He's in there." "I know. So we have to..." The dock creaked. We both turned. No one was on it, nothing visible anyway, but the wood bent slightly in the middle, like weight had settled there. The water around the pilings shifted, not with waves, but with displacement, like something large had just surfaced but stayed hidden beneath the murky surface. "What the fuck?" Ryan whispered. The cabin door behind us opened. Not the one Mark had entered. The main cabin. The one where Ryan had seen the man in the white mask. He was standing in the doorway. Same coveralls. Same mask. He didn't move forward. Didn't need to. He just stood there, occupying the exit, making it very clear that the path back to our car went through him. Ryan raised his camera reflexively, some instinct to document overriding his fear. Through the viewfinder, the man didn't look any less real. If anything, the lens made him sharper, more concrete, a thing that existed whether we believed in it or not. "We didn't mean any harm," Ryan said, his voice shaking. "We were just..." The man tilted his head, slightly, like he was considering something. Then the dock creaked again, louder this time, and I smelled it. Lake water. Rot. Something old and cold and patient. I grabbed Ryan's jacket. "Run." "What about Mark?" "Run." We ran toward the tree line, away from both the cabins and the dock, crashing through underbrush that grabbed at our legs. Behind us, I heard wood splinter. Not the sharp crack of something breaking, but the wet, heavy sound of something old giving way under pressure. We didn't stop until we reached the car. Ryan fumbled with his keys, dropped them, picked them up again. His hands were shaking so badly I had to unlock the door myself. "Mark's still back there," he said as we pulled away. "I know. We have to call someone, the police, someone." "And tell them what?" He didn't answer. We drove in silence until we hit the main road. That's when Ryan finally spoke. "There were two of them, weren't there?" I nodded. "The one in the cabin and the one in the water?" "Yes." "What were they?" I didn't have an answer. Not then. But I was starting to understand something about Crystal Lake, about the way the silence felt, about the rules we'd broken without knowing they existed. We'd trespassed. We'd opened doors. We'd lit fires and stepped on docks and treated sacred ground like it was just another abandoned place waiting to be exploited for content. And something had noticed. Two things, two very different things, and they were both hunting now. We called the police from a gas station 20 miles out. Told them our friend was missing at Crystal Lake, that we'd gotten separated and couldn't find him. We didn't mention the man in the mask. We didn't mention the dock. They said they'd send someone to check it out. They asked if we'd been drinking. Ryan hung up. "They think we're idiots," he said. "We are idiots." We went back. "What do we do now?" I didn't know. Go home, lock our doors. Pretend we'd never heard of Crystal Lake, but I couldn't shake the feeling that it was already too late for that. We'd been seen, marked, filed away in whatever passed for memory in those things. Ryan dropped me off at my apartment just before dark. "I'm going to edit the footage," he said. "See if the camera caught anything we missed." Ryan, don't. I have to know what we saw. I have to. He drove away before I could argue. I went inside, locked the door, checked the windows. Everything was secure. Everything was normal, but normal felt thin now, like a coat of paint over rot. I tried to sleep. Couldn't. Around midnight, I got up to get water, and that's when I saw him. He was standing in my hallway. Not at the end of it, not near the door. He was just there, between my bedroom and the bathroom, like he'd always been there, and I'd simply failed to notice until now. The white mask caught the dim light from the street outside, turning his face into a pale smudge against the darkness. I froze. He didn't move. My apartment is small. 1 bedroom, 1 bath, a kitchen that opens into the living room. The hallway is maybe 8 feet long. He was in the middle of it. I was at one end. The front door was behind him. My phone was in the bedroom. My keys were on the kitchen counter. Every exit required going past him. "Get out," I said. My voice came out smaller than I wanted. He tilted his head. The same gesture I'd seen at the lake. Like he was studying something, learning it, deciding what it meant. I took a step back. He didn't follow. Just stood there, absolutely motionless, except for that slight tilt of his head. I said, "Get out." Nothing. The silence stretched. I could hear my own heartbeat, my own breathing. I could hear the building settling, the hum of the refrigerator, traffic on the street outside. But from him, nothing. No breath, no shift of fabric. He was a void in human shape. Then I heard something else. Footsteps on the stairs outside my apartment. Heavy footsteps, the kind that made the old wood creak and groan. Coming up from the ground floor, slow and steady, like whoever was climbing didn't care about being heard. The man in my hallway turned slightly, his attention shifting toward my door. The footsteps stopped outside. My doorknob rattled. Once, twice. Someone testing it, finding it locked. Then the knob turned anyway. I'd locked it. I knew I'd locked it. But the mechanism gave with a sharp click, and the door swung open, and I saw him, the kind that made the old wood creak and groan. Coming up from the ground floor, slow and steady, like whoever was climbing didn't care about being heard. The man in my hallway turned slightly, his attention shifting toward my door. The footsteps stopped outside. My doorknob rattled. Once, twice. Someone testing it, finding it locked. Then the knob turned anyway. I'd locked it. I knew I'd locked it. But the mechanism gave with a sharp click, and the door swung open, and I saw him. He was massive. That was the first thing. Shoulders so broad they nearly filled the doorframe. Height that made him stoop slightly to look inside. He wore coveralls soaked through with something dark and wet. His face was hidden behind a hockey mask, the white plastic stained and cracked, and somehow worse than the smooth emptiness of the other one. He stepped inside. The floorboards bent under his weight. The man in the hallway turned fully now, his body language shifting in a way I couldn't quite read. Not alarm, not fear. Recognition, maybe. Something older than thought. They saw each other. For a moment, neither moved. The massive one in the doorway, water dripping from his coveralls onto my floor. The other one in the hallway, dry and still and wrong in a completely different way. I pressed myself against the kitchen counter, trying to disappear, trying to become furniture. The one in the doorway took another step forward. His boots left wet prints on the hardwood. The smell hit me then. Lake water and decay and something chemical, like formaldehyde mixed with swamp gas. The one in the hallway didn't retreat, didn't advance, just held his ground, and somehow that felt more threatening than any movement could have been. The air in the apartment changed, thickened, like the pressure before a storm. Then something hit the wall. I didn't see what, didn't see who moved first. There was a sound, not a crash, not a slam, just a deep, heavy thump like a car door closing, and then I was on the floor behind the counter, and the lights were flickering, and I heard wood crack. Another impact. I couldn't tell which one was moving the room. I crawled toward the bedroom, my hands finding broken glass from something that had fallen, my knees soaking in water that had been tracked across the floor. Behind me, the apartment was coming apart, not in a dramatic way, just slowly giving up under the weight of whatever was happening in it. I made it to the bedroom, slammed the door, locked it, pushed my dresser against it for good measure, even though I knew it wouldn't matter. If they wanted in, a dresser wouldn't stop them. But the sounds stopped. The apartment went quiet. I waited, pressed against the far wall, watching the door. Minutes crawled by. 5, 10. My phone was on the nightstand. I grabbed it, dialed 911, but my hands were shaking so badly I couldn't hold it steady. Then I heard my front door close. Not slam, just close, soft and final, like someone leaving after a visit. I waited until the sun came up. When I finally opened the bedroom door, the apartment was empty. My hallway was undisturbed. My front door was closed but unlocked. The only evidence anything had happened was the water on the floor, already starting to dry, and a long crack in the drywall near the kitchen that hadn't been there before. No other damage, no blood, no bodies. They'd been here, both of them, in my home, in my space, and then they'd left. I called Ryan. He didn't pick up. I called again. Nothing. I drove to his place. His car was in the driveway. His front door was open. Inside, his laptop was still running, the editing software frozen on a frame of footage from the lake. On the screen, barely visible in the background of a shot of the dock, were two figures, one standing between the cabins, one rising from the water. They'd been there all along. We just hadn't looked closely enough. Ryan was gone. The apartment was empty. But on the floor near his computer, I found two sets of prints. One dry, one wet. Both leading out the door, both heading in the same direction. I understood then. This wasn't about us specifically. We weren't special. We were just people who'd gone somewhere we shouldn't have, who'd opened doors better left closed, who'd stepped on ground that remembered every trespass. The places that felt safe had changed. Whatever we'd brought back with us, whatever had followed the disturbance we'd made, it didn't respect the boundaries I'd believed in. The lake had come with us, and it wasn't finished. I didn't go to the police. What would I tell them? That two killers had broken into my apartment, fought each other and left? That one smelled like a lake and the other moved like death itself? They'd find Ryan eventually, or they wouldn't. Either way, I couldn't help him anymore. I went to Lena instead. She and Ethan lived in a small house on the edge of town. The kind of rental with thin walls and a yard that was mostly weeds. I showed up just after dawn, still wearing the same clothes from the night before, probably looking half crazy. Lena took one look at me and pulled me inside. Jesus, what happened? Ryan's gone. What do you mean gone? Same way Mark is gone. Same way we're all going to be gone if we don't figure this out. Ethan came into the living room, rubbing sleep from his eyes. Figure what out? I told them everything. The apartment. The two figures. The way they'd looked at each other like they were solving an equation that had me as the variable. The footprints leading away from Ryan's place. We need to leave town, Lena said when I finished. Right now. Pack what we can and just go. Where? I asked. You think distance matters to them? Then what do we do? I didn't have an answer. We spent the day barricaded in their house, curtains drawn, doors locked, trying to convince ourselves that daylight made a difference. Ethan kept checking his phone for news about Mark or Ryan. Nothing. No missing persons reports. No bodies found. It was like they'd been erased. Maybe they left town, Ethan said without conviction. Maybe they're fine and we're just... He stopped. We all heard it. Footsteps in the hallway. Slow. Deliberate. Their house had the same layout as 1,000 other cheap rentals. Living room in front, kitchen in back, hallway connecting the bedrooms. The sound was coming from that hallway, from inside the house. We hadn't heard anyone break in, hadn't heard a door open, but someone was there. Lena grabbed Ethan's arm. The bedroom, she whispered. We backed toward it, moving as quietly as we could. But the footsteps kept pace with us, never getting closer, never falling behind. Just there, matching our rhythm like a shadow. Ethan pushed the bedroom door open. We slipped inside. He started to close it, then froze. The man in the pale mask was blocking the doorway, not rushing toward us, not attacking. Just there, occupying the space we needed to reach, making it very clear that the only direction left was deeper into the house. Go, I said, the window. Ethan yanked at the bedroom window. It was painted shut, the frame swollen with years of humidity. He slammed his shoulder against it. Once, twice. The frame cracked. Behind us, the man didn't move, didn't need to. He'd already done his job. We weren't escaping toward the front. We were running toward the back, toward the yard, toward the woods behind the house. The window gave. Ethan knocked out the remaining glass with his elbow and climbed through. Lena went next. I followed, dropping into the overgrown grass, my ankle rolling on something hidden in the weeds. The trees, Lena said, already running. We can lose him in the trees. We ran. The woods behind their house weren't much, just a thin strip of forest that backed up against a drainage ditch and the service road beyond. But in the moment, it felt like salvation. Branches grabbed at our clothes. Roots tried to trip us. We crashed through underbrush like animals, and I kept waiting to hear footsteps behind us, to feel that presence catching up. But the woods were empty. Too empty. We reached the drainage ditch, a concrete channel maybe 6 feet deep, with a trickle of water running through it. Lena started to climb down, and that's when Ethan grabbed her. Wait. What? Listen. We listened. No birds, no insects, no wind. The same careful emptiness I'd felt at Crystal Lake. We need to keep moving, I said. But Lena wasn't listening anymore. She was staring at something in the ditch, at the water running through it. It wasn't clear water, it was dark, silty, and it smelled wrong. That's not rainwater, she said. Ethan crouched at the edge. It's coming from upstream, from... He didn't finish, didn't need to. We all knew what was upstream: the lake, the drainage system, the pipes that fed water from Crystal Lake into the town's runoff, into the ditches and channels that ran under streets and behind houses. We'd never thought about it before. Why would we? It was just infrastructure, just pipes. But water carries more than water. The surface of the ditch rippled, not from wind, not from current. Something underneath had disturbed it, and that disturbance was moving closer. "Run," I said. Lena bolted. Ethan followed. I was right behind them, but my ankle was still weak from the landing, and I stumbled, went down hard on the concrete edge of the ditch. When I looked up, Ethan was gone. Not grabbed, not pulled, just gone. 1 second he was there, the next there was only empty space and Lena screaming his name. Then I saw him in the water. No, not in the water. Under it, face down, arms spread like he'd been placed there deliberately. The dark water flowed around him, indifferent. Lena ran toward him. I tried to grab her, missed. She dropped into the ditch, splashing through the shallow water, reaching for Ethan. The water surged. It didn't rise, didn't flood. It just moved all at once, like something massive had displaced it from below. Lena lost her footing, went under, came up coughing. I saw him then. He rose from the water at the far end of the ditch. Broad shoulders breaking the surface first, then the cracked hockey mask, then the rest of him. Coveralls streaming dark water. Machete held loose in one hand. He waded toward Lena. She scrambled backward, trying to get to the concrete edge, but her feet kept slipping in the silt. She wasn't going to make it. Then I heard the footsteps behind me. The man with the pale mask emerged from the tree line. He moved with that same careful economy, not hurrying, not hesitating. His focus was on me. Had been on me the whole time. I had maybe 3 seconds to make a choice. I jumped into the ditch. The water was colder than it should have been, deeper than it looked. I grabbed Lena, hauled her toward the opposite bank, away from both of them. She was sobbing, reaching back toward where Ethan's body was already sinking, but I didn't let go. We scrambled up the far side onto the service road. Behind us, I heard the water move again, heard concrete crack under weight. But when I looked back, only one of them was following. The man with the pale mask. He climbed out of the ditch on our side, water running off his coveralls even though he'd never been in the water. Always dry, always exact. The other one, the massive one, had stayed behind, in the water, in his element, with his prize. I understood then. This wasn't cooperation. This wasn't teamwork. This was territory. One of them had claimed Ethan the moment he'd stepped into that water. The other had driven us there, herded us like animals toward a kill zone. He didn't even need to occupy himself. They didn't work together. They just didn't work against each other. And we were caught between them. Lena and I ran until we hit the main road. She was crying, hyperventilating, barely able to stand. A car stopped. A woman asked if we were okay. I lied and said we'd been attacked by a dog in the woods. She drove us to the hospital. They treated Lena for shock and minor cuts from the window glass. They asked about Ethan. Lena said he'd gone home separately, that he was fine. Another lie. But what else could we say? That her boyfriend had been taken by something that lived in the drainage water? That we'd led him there by running from something worse? I sat in the waiting room while they kept Lena overnight for observation. On the TV mounted in the corner, the local news was running a story about the escaped prisoner. They'd expanded the search, added roadblocks, warned people to stay inside after dark. They had no idea. The prisoner hadn't escaped. He'd arrived. And he'd brought the lake with him, or the lake had brought him. I wasn't sure which anymore. All I knew was that the rules had changed. The boundaries I'd believed in, the separation between there and here, between then and now, weren't holding. We'd opened something at Crystal Lake, or woken it, or reminded it that the world beyond its shores was full of people who'd forgotten how to be afraid. And now it was teaching us again. One by one, Lena checked herself out of the hospital the next morning. Against medical advice, the discharge papers said. They wanted to keep her for observation, run some tests, talk to a counselor. She refused everything. I picked her up at the entrance. She got in the car without a word, stared straight ahead as I drove. "Where do you want to go?" I asked. "Anywhere. Nowhere. Does it matter?" "Lena, he's dead." Her voice was flat, empty. "Ethan's dead, and we left him there, in that water, with that thing." I didn't argue. There was nothing to say that would make it better. We drove to a motel on the highway, the kind of place with hourly rates and a neon sign that buzzed louder than the traffic. Cash only, no questions asked. We rented a room with 2 beds and triple locked the door. For a while, we just sat there. Lena on one bed, me on the other. The TV played with the sound off. Outside, cars passed in waves. "Heading somewhere that wasn't here. We're going to die," Lena said eventually. "Aren't we?" "I don't know." "That's not an answer. It's the only one I have." She pulled her knees to her chest, wrapped her arms around them. "Tell me what you know. Everything. No more protecting me, no more waiting until I'm ready. Just tell me." So I did. I told her about Michael Myers, about the escape, the attacks, the way he moved like he'd already decided where you'd be before you knew yourself. I told her about Jason Voorhees, about Crystal Lake, about the old stories of a boy who drowned and a mother who killed, and something that came back wrong. I told her about the patterns I'd been trying to piece together. "They're not random," I said. "At least I don't think they are. They seem to respond to things, specific things." "Like what?" "I think Jason responds to trespass, to people entering his territory, touching his property, disturbing the lake. Every time we've seen him, he seemed tied to water somehow. The dock, the apartment. My building has old pipes, probably connected to the same drainage system, the ditch. It's like he can't leave the lake's reach, or won't." And the other one, "Michael doesn't seem to care about territory. He cares about pursuit, about the hunt. If you move, if you show life, if you give him a target, he'll follow. But if you stay perfectly still, if you become nothing..." I paused. "I think he just remains, like he's waiting for you to prove you're still alive." "Remains for what? For you to breathe wrong? To twitch? To move? He's patient in a way that doesn't feel human." Lena was quiet for a moment, then, "So we can't move and we can't stay still. We can't run and we can't hide. What the hell are we supposed to do?" "We use them." "Use them?" "They don't work together, Lena. They just happen to be in the same place at the same time." Michael drove us toward Jason's territory. Jason took Ethan because Ethan entered his domain. But they're not coordinating. They're not communicating. They're just existing in proximity. So maybe we can make them choose. Force a situation where one of them has to respond to the other, not to us. Lena stared at me. You want to use 2 serial killers as what? A distraction? I want to survive. And the only way I can see that happening is if we stop being the most immediate problem in whatever room they're in. And she was quiet again, processing. Then she asked the question I'd been dreading. How? I'd been thinking about this since the ditch, since watching the water surge and understanding finally what we might be dealing with. Jason doesn't seem to leave the lake's reach. Every time we've seen him, he's been connected to water somehow. The dock, the apartment. My building has old pipes, probably connected to the same drainage system. The ditch. It's like he's tied to it. Like the water is, I don't know, his element, his boundary. Maybe. Okay. Michael doesn't have boundaries. He follows. He pursues. He's been inside our homes, our cars, our lives. He goes where we go. So if we go back to the lake, we put Michael in Jason's territory, make him cross a line he doesn't care about, but Jason might. Lena shook her head. That's insane. You have a better idea? She didn't. We spent the rest of the day planning, or trying to. The truth was we barely had a plan, more like a desperate hope that when 2 forces met, they'd be too busy with each other to finish what they'd started with us. The trick would be getting Michael to follow us to the exact right spot. Not just anywhere near the lake, somewhere specific. Somewhere that might register as a violation Jason couldn't ignore. The dock, I said. He has to step onto the dock. Why the dock? Because that's where it seemed strongest. That's where you saw the water move on our first night. That's the boundary point. It's not just near the water. It's on it. Over it. And you think Michael will follow us there? If we give him a reason. If we make ourselves visible enough. I stopped. If we what? If I go alone. No. Lena. I said no. We're not splitting up. That's how people die in these situations. People are already dying. We can't keep running forever. One of us has to be the bait, and it should be me. I'm the one who saw him first. Wanted to tell her that wasn't how this worked. That survival wasn't about fairness or loyalty or keeping promises. But I didn't. Because maybe she was right. Maybe the only way to beat this was to refuse to play by the rules we thought applied. Night fell. We took turns sleeping, one of us always awake and watching the door. The parking lot stayed empty. The neon sign buzzed. Traffic thinned to nothing. Around 3 a.m., Lena woke me up. There's someone outside. I looked. Through the thin curtains, I could see a shape near our room. Tall, motionless. The parking lot light behind him turned his silhouette into a cutout against the night. He'd found us. Of course he had. The bathroom, I whispered. Window. We moved fast but quiet, slipping into the tiny bathroom and easing the window open. It faced the back of the motel, a stretch of weeds and broken asphalt that led to the highway access road. Lena went first. I followed, dropping into the weeds, my bad ankle protesting. We ran for the road. Behind us, I heard the motel room door open, not broken, not forced, just opened like he'd had a key all along. We reached the access road as a truck passed, and I flagged it down without thinking. The driver, an older man with a trucker's cap and suspicious eyes, slowed but didn't stop completely. "Please," Lena said, "we need a ride, anywhere. It's an emergency." Something in her voice must have convinced him. He unlocked the passenger door. We climbed in. "Where to?" "North," I said, "toward the lake." The driver gave me a strange look but pulled back onto the road. In the side mirror, I saw the pale mask watching from the motel parking lot. Not following. Not yet. But he would. They always did. The truck carried us through the dark, away from the motel and toward the one place I'd sworn I'd never return to. Crystal Lake, where it felt like it had to return, where it might end. The trucker dropped us off at the service road that led to Crystal Lake. He didn't ask why we wanted to go there at 4 a.m. Maybe he didn't want to know. We walked the rest of the way in darkness, using my phone's flashlight sparingly, trying not to think about what we were walking toward. The camp looked different at night. Smaller, more compressed. The cabins hunched together like they were trying to stay warm. The lake was a black mirror that reflected nothing. "This is a terrible plan," Lena whispered. "I know. We're going to die here. Maybe. That's really not comforting. It's not supposed to be." We moved through the clearing, past the cabins we'd explored what felt like a lifetime ago. The dock stretched ahead of us, skeletal in the dim light. Some of the planks had rotted through since we'd been here last. Or maybe they'd always been like that and we just hadn't noticed. "How do we know he'll come?" Lena asked. "He always comes." "And Jason?" "If Michael steps where he shouldn't, Jason will notice, I think." "You think?" "It's all I have." We reached the edge of the dock. The wood creaked under our weight, protesting. The water below was perfectly still. No ripples, no movement. It looked frozen, even though the night wasn't cold enough for ice. "Now what?" Lena asked. "Now we wait, and we make ourselves visible." I turned on my phone's flashlight and set it on the dock, pointing up. Then Lena's phone. 2 points of light in the darkness, advertising our location to anything that was watching. And something was always watching. We stood near the lights, but not too close to the water. That was the balance we had to strike. Visible enough to be followed, but not so deep into Jason's territory that he'd respond to us instead of Michael. Minutes passed. The woods behind us were utterly quiet. No wind, no animals. Just that same held breath emptiness that had greeted us on our first visit. Then I saw him. He emerged from the tree line like he'd been standing there the whole time and simply decided to become visible. The pale mask caught the phone light, turning his face into a blank moon. He moved with that same deliberate economy, not hurrying, not hesitating, coming for us. "He's here," I whispered. Lena grabbed my arm. "What do we do?" We moved back, slowly, toward the water. "You said not to get too close." "I know what I said, but we need him to follow. We need him to step onto this dock." We backed up. 1 step, 2. The planks groaned beneath us. Michael kept coming, maintaining the same steady pace, closing the distance. He reached the dock, stopped. For a moment, I thought our plan had failed before it even started, that he'd simply wait us out, let us panic, let us make the mistake. But then he took another step, onto the wood, over the water. The lake reacted, not dramatically, not with waves or surges. The surface just changed, like something underneath had opened its eyes. The water went from black glass to something darker, something aware. Michael didn't seem to notice, or didn't care. He kept coming, each footstep deliberate, the dock bending slightly under his weight. Lena and I backed up further. We were running out of dock. Another few steps and we'd be at the end, with nowhere to go but into the water or past him. That's when the planks near the shore began to crack. Not where Michael was walking. Behind him, between him and the land. The wood splintered with a wet sound, like bones breaking underwater. One plank, then another. A section of the dock sagged, then collapsed, and dark water rushed up through the gap. Michael stopped. For the first time since I'd seen him, he didn't advance, didn't retreat, just remained. The mask angled down slightly toward the broken planks, toward the water surging through. The water in the gap moved, not flowing, moving like it had muscles under the surface. Then he rose. Jason came up through the broken section of dock like he'd been underneath all along. Water streamed off his coveralls. The hockey mask was cracked worse than I remembered. Half the face caved in, but somehow that made it worse, more real. He pulled himself onto the intact portion of the dock with a sound like concrete settling. The wood groaned. The whole structure tilted slightly toward him, responding to the sheer mass of his presence. Michael turned to face him. They were maybe 15 feet apart. Us at one end of the dock, Jason in the middle, Michael between us and the shore. Nowhere to run, nowhere to hide. For a moment, nobody moved. Then Jason took a step toward Michael. The dock screamed under the pressure. Water sloshed up through the gaps in the planks. Michael didn't retreat, didn't advance, just held his ground. I realized our mistake then. We'd thought getting them in the same space would be enough, that they'd fight each other and forget about us. But we'd underestimated how patient they both were, how willing to wait. "We need to move," I whispered to Lena. "Where?" "Into the water. It's the only way past them." "Are you insane? That's Jason's." "I know. But staying here is death. Moving is maybe not death. I'll take maybe." Before she could argue, I jumped. The water was colder than anything I'd ever felt. Not just cold. Wrong. It clung to me like oil, thick and resistant. I couldn't see anything below the surface, couldn't tell how deep it was. I surfaced, gasping. Lena was still on the dock, frozen. "Jump!" I shouted. Above me, Jason turned. His attention shifted from Michael to the water, to me, to the thing that had just invaded his domain. Michael moved then, too fast to track. He closed the distance to Jason in 2 strides, and I saw the knife flash in his hand. The blade went into Jason's shoulder. Deep. Michael held it there, not twisting, not pulling. Just applying pressure like he was pinning something in place. Jason didn't react to the pain. He reached out, grabbed Michael by the throat with one massive hand, and lifted him off the dock. Lena jumped. She hit the water beside me, went under, came up coughing. We swam for the shore, the water fighting us every stroke, like it didn't want to let us go. Behind us, I heard the dock break. Not collapse, break, like something had punched through it from above. Wood splintered. Metal groaned. Something heavy hit the water. We reached the muddy bank and scrambled up, soaking and shaking. When I looked back, the dock was gone. Not destroyed. Gone. Swallowed by the water, leaving only a few broken pilings sticking up like teeth. The lake's surface rolled. Not with waves. With something underneath, something moving, something fighting. "Did we?" Lena started. "Run," I said. We ran for the tree line, past the cabins, toward where we'd left the access road. Behind us, the water continued to churn, and I couldn't tell if it was 2 things fighting, or one thing consuming another, or something else entirely. We didn't stop running until we reached the road. collapsed against a tree, tried to breathe. "Is it over?" Lena asked. I looked back toward the lake. Through the trees, I could see the water. It was calm now, perfectly still, like nothing had happened, but I knew better. "No," I said, "it's not over." Because I'd seen something in that last moment before we'd run, a shape pulling itself onto the far shore, tall, covered in lake water, moving with purpose, and behind it, another shape, slower, heavier, following. They'd gone into the water together, but they'd come out separately. And whatever they were doing in the water hadn't ended. We made it maybe half a mile before we had to stop. Lena was coughing up lake water, doubled over on the side of the road. I wasn't much better. My clothes were soaked through, my ankle throbbing, and I couldn't stop shaking. "We need to keep moving," I said between breaths. "Where? Where are we even going?" I didn't have an answer. Away from the lake, away from them. But I was starting to understand that distance didn't matter. Not anymore. The sky was beginning to lighten. Not dawn yet, but that gray pre-dawn dimness that makes everything look washed out and unreal. The road stretched in both directions, empty, no cars, no lights. Just us in the woods pressing in from both sides. That's when I heard the footsteps, not behind us, ahead. He emerged from the tree line like mist taking shape. The pale mask, the coveralls still dry despite everything. He'd circled around somehow, gotten ahead of us while we were running blind. Lena grabbed my arm. "How?" "Doesn't matter. Back. We go back." We turned and ran the other way. My ankles screamed with each step, but I didn't slow down, couldn't. The road curved ahead, following the shoreline. I could hear the lake through the trees, that particular stillness water makes when it's waiting. Then I saw the second shape. He came from the woods on our right, moving with that heavy, inexorable momentum. Water still streamed from his coveralls. The hockey mask caught the dim light, and I could see now that half of it was caved in, like something had crushed it from the inside. He didn't run, didn't need to, he just walked. And somehow that was worse. We were trapped between them. The road narrowed here, barely 2 lanes wide, with drainage ditches on either side and forest beyond. Michael ahead, Jason behind, both closing at their own pace. "The ditch," Lena said. "We can—" "No, the water. Jason will—" But we were out of options. The drainage ditch to our left led away from the lake, uphill toward town. Maybe if we could get enough distance, get to people, get to somewhere that felt real. We jumped. The ditch was shallower than the lake, but the water was the same. Too cold, too thick, wrong. We splashed through it, trying to run, but it fought every step. Behind us, I heard boots hit pavement. Michael had reached the edge of the ditch. He stopped there at the concrete rim, looking down at us. He didn't follow, and that's when I understood. Water wasn't his element. It didn't stop him, didn't hurt him, but something about it made him hesitate. Wasn't the right word. Recalibrate, maybe. He needed solid ground. Needed the hunt to be on his terms. Jason, though. Jason was already in the water. He'd entered the ditch further down, where it connected to a culvert that ran under the road. Now he was wading upstream toward us, and the water seemed to part for him. Or maybe it was pulling him forward. Hard to tell which. We scrambled up the far side of the ditch, onto a service road that ran parallel to the main one. An old boat ramp, probably. The concrete was cracked and overgrown, leading down to a small inlet where the lake fed into the drainage system. And there, at the water's edge, was a dock. Not the main dock. A smaller one, barely 20 feet long, used for maintenance access or small boats. It was in worse shape than the one we'd destroyed. Planks missing, railings collapsed. It jutted out into the inlet like a broken finger. Michael appeared at the top of the service road. He'd gone around. Of course he had. He didn't run, didn't hurry, but he was always there, always in position. Jason emerged from the culvert, water streaming off him. He pulled himself up onto the bank with a wet sound, and the ground settled under his weight. We backed onto the dock. It was the only space left. The only place that wasn't them. The wood groaned immediately. This dock wasn't built for weight. Wasn't built for anything anymore except slow rot. But it was there, and we were out of everywhere else. Michael reached the dock's entrance first. He stepped onto the first plank. It bent under him, just slightly, just enough. Jason turned. The attention shift was instant. One moment he was focused on us, on the intruders in his water, his territory. The next, his head turned toward Michael, toward the thing that had just stepped onto his dock, and everything changed. The air felt heavier. The water in the inlet went absolutely still. Then Jason moved. He came up onto the dock with a sound like a tree falling. The whole structure shuddered. Planks cracked. One of the support posts groaned and tilted. Michael didn't retreat, didn't adjust. He just stood there, knife in hand, waiting. They were maybe 10 feet apart. We were at the far end of the dock. Nowhere to go but the water, and neither of us wanted to go in the water again. Jason closed the distance in 2 steps. He swung at Michael. Not a punch, a sweep. His arm moving like a battering ram, all mass and momentum. It caught Michael in the chest, drove him backward into the railing. The railing snapped. Michael grabbed it as it broke, used the leverage, twisted his body. He was back on his feet in a second, knife already moving. The blade went into Jason's side under the ribs. Deep. Jason didn't flinch, didn't slow. He grabbed Michael's wrist, the one holding the knife, and I heard something crack. Not the knife. Bone. But Michael didn't let go, didn't pull back. He just stood there, arm broken, knife still embedded in Jason's torso. And it was the most terrifying thing I'd ever seen. That refusal to yield, that absolute absence of self-preservation. Jason yanked him forward by the broken wrist, pulled him close, then headbutted him. The 2 masks collided with a sound like a gunshot. The white mask cracked. The hockey mask caved in further. Neither of them fell. The dock tilted. Water rushed up between the planks. We scrambled to keep our footing, but they didn't seem to notice. They were locked together now, too close for the knife to be useful, too close for Jason's reach advantage to matter. Jason got his other hand around Michael's throat, lifted him, not all the way off the dock, just enough that Michael's feet weren't bearing his full weight anymore. That's when Michael's body slackened. Not surrender, not strategy. His weight just dropped suddenly, and whether it was instinct or damage or something else, I couldn't tell. But the shift pulled them both toward the weakest section of dock. The planks gave. Not all of them. Just a section, maybe 6 feet wide, right where they were standing. The wood dropped into the inlet and both of them went with it. The water closed over them. For a moment, everything was still. The dock settled. the water smoothed. Lena and I stood on the remaining planks, watching, waiting for one of them to surface. The water erupted. Jason came up first, rising like something geological. Water poured off him in sheets. He had Michael by the coveralls, was holding him under, and I could see Michael's hands moving, could see the knife still in his grip, still stabbing, still trying to find something vital. But Jason just held him there, held him down, patient, immovable. Then Michael's hand found something. Not Jason's body, the support post, the old wooden piling that held up what was left of the dock. His hand closed on it. The pressure shifted. Whether he meant to or the post simply took the strain instead of him, the weight distributed differently now. For a moment they were frozen like that. Jason trying to pull him away from the post. Michael's grip on the wood. A stalemate of pure force. Then Michael let go of the knife. Both hands on the post now. The wood under stress from two directions. The post cracked. Not at the base, at the middle. It bent, then splintered, and the entire remaining section of dock lurched to one side. We fell. I hit the water hard, went under, tasted that thick chemical taste again, came up gasping. Lena surfaced beside me, grabbed my arm. "Swim," she choked out. We swam for the bank, away from the dock, away from them. Behind us, I could hear wood breaking, could hear the water moving in ways water shouldn't move. We pulled ourselves onto solid ground, onto the service road, and looked back. The dock was gone, completely, collapsed into the inlet. Just broken wood floating on dark water. And in the middle of it, still fighting, were two shapes. Jason had Michael by the throat again, was forcing him down. Michael had both hands on Jason's arm, not trying to break the grip, just holding on. They sank together. The water closed over them. Bubbles broke the surface. Then nothing. We waited. 10 seconds, 20, 30. The water began to move, not churning, rolling, like something underneath was turning, repositioning. Then the surface broke. One of them surfaced, pulled himself onto the bank on the far side of the inlet. Water streamed off him. The white mask split from forehead to chin, but still on his face. His arm hung wrong, but he stood, got to his feet, turned away from the water, and walked into the woods. Not running, not limping, just walking. Like nothing had happened. Like he had somewhere else to be. The water moved again, something rose. Slower, heavier. Pulled himself onto the same bank. The hockey mask barely holding together. Coveralls torn. The knife still in his side. He turned and looked at us. For a moment, I thought he'd come for us. Finish what we'd started by coming here. By trespassing, by disrupting his territory. But he just stood there. Water pooling around his boots. Looking. Then he turned and walked back into the water. Didn't sink. Didn't swim. Just waded deeper and deeper until the lake swallowed him and he was gone. The inlet went still. Morning light broke over the trees. Real morning. Not gray pre-dawn, but actual sunrise. Warm and ordinary and impossible after what we'd just seen. "Did we win?" Lena whispered. "No." "Then what just happened?" "I don't know. I think we just stopped mattering." "So it's over?" I looked at the woods where Michael had disappeared, looked at the water where Jason had vanished, thought about the way Michael had walked away, purposeful, like he was going somewhere specific, thought about the way Jason had returned to the depths, like he was going home. No, I said, it's not over. Because I understood something now. Something worse than anything we'd faced. They weren't dead. Neither of them. They'd fought, they'd hurt each other, they'd gone into the water together. But they'd come out separately. They'd survived each other. That was the part I couldn't forget. We walked. Not ran, not anymore. We were too tired, too beaten down, too empty. We just walked along the service road, following it away from the inlet, away from the lake, towards something that might be civilization. The sun was fully up now, birds were singing. Normal morning sounds from a normal morning in a normal world. Except we knew better. "Where do we go?" Lena asked. Her voice was hoarse from the lake water, from screaming, from everything. "Away." "That's not a plan. It's all I have left." We reached a paved road eventually, a real one with lane markings and a faded yellow line down the middle. It led into town, or what passed for town out here. A gas station, a diner, a handful of houses spread out along the roadside. "We should tell someone," Lena said. "The police, someone." "And say what?" "That we saw two killers fight each other in a lake and they both walked away?" "We have to do something." But I wasn't sure we did. Wasn't sure there was anything to do except survive and hope that whatever we'd witnessed was finished with us. We were passing one of the houses when I saw it. Footprints. 2 sets. Leading from the drainage ditch behind the house, across the yard, toward the back door. One set was wet. Deep impressions in the soft earth. Water still pooling in the depressions. They came from the direction of the lake and stopped at the back porch. The other set was dry, shallow, precise. They came from the woods and led to the same door. Both sets ended at the threshold. The back door was open. "No," I said, "no, we're not." But Lena was already moving toward the house. "Someone might be hurt. We can't just..." "Lena, don't." She didn't listen. She walked up to the back door and looked inside. Then she went very still. "What?" I asked. "What is it?" She didn't answer. Just stood there staring into the house. I came up beside her, looked through the doorway. The kitchen was empty, clean, normal. Coffee maker on the counter, dishes in the sink, a calendar on the wall marked with appointments and reminders. But there were wet footprints on the linoleum, leading from the back door through the kitchen into the hallway beyond. And there were dry footprints, running parallel to the wet ones, never crossing, never touching. Both sets led deeper into the house. "We need to leave," I said. "What if someone's in there?" "Then they're already dead. You don't know that." But I did. Or I thought I did. Because whatever had happened at the lake, whatever we'd set in motion, it wasn't finished. And anyone caught between those two forces. Lena stepped inside. "Lena, no, just a quick look, just to make sure." I followed her, because leaving her alone was worse than going in. We moved through the kitchen, careful not to step on the prints, though I don't know why that mattered. The wet ones smelled like the lake. The dry ones smelled like nothing at all. The hallway was narrow, dark. Family photos on the walls, a coat rack, a closed door at the end. The footprints led to that door. Both sets. They stopped there. Like the threshold had mattered to more than one thing. Not at the same time, not for the same reason. "We should open it," Lena whispered. "We really shouldn't." But she reached for the handle anyway. I grabbed her wrist. Listen to me, whatever's behind that door, we can't help it. We can't fix it. All we can do is add ourselves to the list of people who didn't walk away. She looked at me. Her eyes were red from crying, from lake water, from exhaustion. Then what do? We leave right now. We get in a car, we drive until we run out of road, and we never come back here. For a moment, I thought she'd argue. Thought she'd insist on opening the door, on seeing what was inside, on trying to save whatever couldn't be saved. But then we heard it, a sound from behind the door. Not a voice, not a scream, just a sound. A wet, heavy sound, like something settling, like weight finding a new position. Lena stepped back. Okay, we go. We backed away from the door, down the hallway, through the kitchen. Neither of us ran, but we moved fast, and we didn't look back. We were almost to the back door when I heard footsteps. Not from inside the house, from outside. Someone was coming up the back steps. Heavy boots on wood. Deliberate, unhurried. I grabbed Lena and pulled her to the side into the narrow space between the refrigerator and the wall. We pressed ourselves flat, trying to disappear. The back door swung open. He stepped inside. Not Michael, not Jason, a man. Normal height. Work boots, flannel shirt. He had a cup of coffee in one hand and keys in the other. He looked tired, like he'd just finished a night shift. He walked through the kitchen without seeing us, called out, "Honey, I'm home." No answer. He set his coffee on the counter, hung his keys on the hook by the door. "Sarah, you up?" Still no answer. He walked toward the hallway, toward that closed door at the end. I wanted to shout, wanted to warn him. But my throat had closed up and I couldn't make a sound. He reached the door, put his hand on the handle, opened it. For a moment, nothing happened. He just stood there, looking into the room. Then he made a sound. Not a scream, something worse, something that started human and ended somewhere else. He stumbled backward, hit the wall, slid down to the floor. The door swung shut, slowly, on its own, like it had never been opened. The man sat there staring at nothing. His mouth moved, but no words came out. Lena pulled on my arm. "Now. We go now." We slipped out the back door, down the steps, across the yard. We didn't run until we hit the road, and then we ran hard, not looking back, not stopping. We ran until we couldn't run anymore, until we collapsed on the shoulder of the road, gasping, shaking. "What was in there?" Lena asked between breaths. "I don't know." The footprints went to the door, both sets, but only the man came back out. "I know." "So where did they go?" I didn't have an answer, because the footprints had led into that house, to that door, and then nothing. No exit, no trace. Unless they hadn't left. Unless something from the lake had reached that house. Unless whatever walked through the woods had found its way inside. "We need to keep moving," I said. "Get to town, get to people. Maybe if there are enough witnesses, enough crowds." "You think that'll stop them?" "No. But maybe it'll slow them down." We got to our feet, started walking again. The town was maybe a mile away. We could see the buildings from here, the church steeple, the water tower. Behind us, I heard a door close. Not loud, just a soft click, like someone had finished their business and was ready to move on. I didn't look back. Neither did Lena. We just walked faster. Because I understood something now. Something that made everything worse. They didn't return to the lake. They didn't return to wherever they'd come from. The lake had followed one set of prints. The woods had followed the other. And they'd left something behind, or taken something with them. And now they were moving on, separately, following their own paths, doing what they did. And we were still here, still alive, still witnesses, still running from things that didn't need to run. The town was ahead. People, cars, normal life. But I knew now that normal was just a word, just a thing we told ourselves when we didn't want to admit what was really out there. And what was out there had followed us home. Not as a group, not as a unit, as two separate forces, two separate kinds of wrong. And the boundaries we'd believed in, the ones that said monsters stayed in their lakes, stayed in their territories, stayed away from daylight and witnesses in the real world, those boundaries weren't real. The line I thought existed wasn't there. And whatever rules I'd believed in no longer applied. We made it to town. The diner was open. Early morning crowd. Construction workers getting coffee before their shifts. A waitress who looked like she'd been working there since the place was built. Normal people doing normal things. Lena and I sat in a booth by the window. Ordered coffee we didn't drink. Tried to look like we belonged. "What now?" Lena asked. "I don't know. We can't stay here. We can't leave either, not yet." She looked at me like I was crazy. Maybe I was, but I kept thinking about that house. About the man who'd come home to find his world changed. About the door he shouldn't have opened. Someone had to know. Someone had to understand what was happening. I asked the waitress if anyone had reported anything strange that morning. Missing persons, break-ins, anything. She gave me a look. "You okay, honey?" "Just curious." Well, there was something. Eddie down at the marina said he found wet footprints all through the boathouse this morning. Said they came up from the water and just stopped. Like whoever left them just vanished. She shook her head. Probably kids messing around. Not kids. Anything else? Sheriff got a call about the old Jensen place. Someone said they heard screaming. But when he went to check it out, the house was empty. Doors were all locked from the inside. She refilled my coffee even though I hadn't touched it. "Why do you ask?" "No reason." But there was a reason, because the pattern was there if you knew how to look for it. Wet prints from the water, empty houses, locked doors that shouldn't be locked. The lake was spreading, and something else was moving through the spaces in between. We left the diner an hour later. The sun was higher now, the day warming up. People were out, kids on bikes, someone mowing their lawn. The town looked safe, felt safe, but I knew better. We walked past the church, past the library, past the elementary school where a crossing guard was helping children across the street. That's when I saw them. Not the entities themselves, their signs, a puddle of water on the sidewalk, too dark, too still. It wasn't from rain. We hadn't had rain in days. And further down the street, near the park, I saw marks on a tree trunk. Deep gouges, fresh, like something had grabbed it and pulled itself up. Lena saw them too. They're here. They're everywhere. We have to warn people. And say what? That 2 killers are in town, and they might be standing behind you right now, but you won't know until it's too late. So we just let them. We can't stop them, Lena. We never could. All we did was get in the way. All we did was remind them that there were other places to be. She was quiet for a moment, then, "So what do? We survive, we keep moving, we stay in crowds, we don't go near water, we don't walk alone at night, we do everything we can to not be worth their attention. For how long? I don't know. Maybe forever. We kept walking, stayed in the open, stayed where people could see us, but I kept noticing things, small things, wrong things. A storefront with the door slightly ajar, even though the sign said closed. A car in the parking lot with all its windows fogged, even though it was warm outside. A woman walking her dog who suddenly stopped, stared at something I couldn't see, and turned around without a word. The town felt thinner somehow, like the membrane between normal and not normal had worn through in places. We ended up at the community center. There was some kind of event happening. A farmer's market, maybe. Lots of people, lots of noise, lots of witnesses, safety in numbers. That's what I told myself. Lena and I sat on a bench near the entrance, watched people come and go, tried to spot anything out of place. "There," Lena said suddenly. "What?" "By the parking lot, do you see it?" I looked. At first I didn't see anything, just cars, just people loading groceries into their trunks. Then I saw him. A man in coveralls, dry, clean, moving between the rows of cars with that same unhurried pace. And near the storm drain at the edge of the lot, water was seeping up. Dark water. More than there should be. "We need to go," I said. But before we could move, someone screamed. Not from the parking lot, from inside the community center. People started running out. Not panicked. Just leaving quickly, quietly. Like they'd seen something they didn't want to talk about. A woman grabbed my arm as she passed. "Don't go in there." "What happened?" "I don't know. The lights went out, and when they came back on..." She shook her head. "Just don't go in there." Police sirens in the distance. Getting closer. Lena pulled me away from the bench. "We have to leave now." We walked fast. Not running, not drawing attention. Just two people leaving a community center like everyone else. Behind us, I heard more sirens, ambulances, fire trucks. I didn't look back. We kept walking until we were out of town, back on the highway, back to nowhere in particular. "Where do we go?" Lena asked for the third time that day. And for the third time, I didn't have an answer, because it didn't matter where we went. The places they belonged to no longer contained them. Crystal Lake was quiet now. Haddonfield was somewhere else, somewhere I'd never been. But the things that lived there weren't bound anymore. Jason finds water. Wherever it is, it doesn't stay untouched for long. I think, I believe. I've seen enough to know that much. Michael keeps moving. That much is certain. Where he goes, doors open, locks stop mattering. Different territories, different methods, different nightmares. But the same truth underneath it all. Nothing stopped. It only moved. I'm telling you this now because you need to know, you need to understand what's out there. Check your doors at night. Stay away from water that feels too still. Don't investigate sounds you can't explain. And if you see footprints, wet or dry, going somewhere they shouldn't, don't follow them. Because whatever left those prints isn't interested in being found. It's interested in finding you. Crystal Lake is empty now. The camp is just ruins. The water is just water. But somewhere else, in some other town, someone is about to make the same mistake we did. They're going to trespass, they're going to disturb, they're going to think they're safe because This isn't Crystal Lake, this isn't Haddonfield, this isn't one of those places, and they'll be wrong, because the places aren't what make them dangerous. The things that live there are, and those things are everywhere now. I haven't been back to Crystal Lake. I don't plan to. But sometimes I dream about it. About the dock, about the water, about the two shapes that fought each other and walked away. And sometimes when I wake up, I notice something wrong. Wet where it shouldn't be. A shape where there wasn't one before. I don't know which anymore. I just know they haven't forgotten. They never forget. They only change addresses.